This is a GERE Network production.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy, Mr. Perez, and you're listening to the Better Live Than Dead podcast, brought to you exclusively on GERE Network. Listen in.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to episode number 62 of the Better Live Than Dead podcast. I am Ryan Wolf.
62.
I am Ryan Wolf, the man on the other end of the line, Mr. Perez.
What's up, people? Episode 62.
I was going to say, I never know when to cut you off. I don't know if I should just go straight in or if I should stop. Usually I stop and let you say it. This time I just felt going straight through. Whatever, it happens.
It's all good, bro.
So
it is all good.
So I just want to, we can kind of just go back and forth, but I just want to get started with some news. Get the smaller things out of the way first, then we'll jump into some football. I'm assuming that a lot of people will appreciate that. I want to start off in golf because the year of Jordan Spieth has come to a close. Excuse me. It looked like last week that he may not be able to win the Tour Championship, and at this point it was between him and Henrik Stenson at that point, either of which who won would win the Tour Championship and the FedEx Cup. Well, Jordan Spieth shot a 68 and 69 respectively in rounds 3 and 4 on Saturday and Sunday, which put him at 9 under for the entire tournament. And that would give him the Tour Championship, which also gives him the FedEx Cup. And as a 22-year-old, he has won $22 million this season on the PGA Tour. So I'll tell you what.
It's not a bad year.
It has been a breakthrough year for Jordan Spieth. It has been a breakthrough year for golf. And if Jordan Spieth can even somewhat repeat the success that he had this last year, golf is in pretty good hands, I would have to say.
I agree with you. He's an exciting young guy. He's a good player. There's actually a couple people on the tour who I think will be able to keep golf going. And $22 million, man, in one season, we went into the wrong profession.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, too, the crazy part about it is Rory McIlroy's kind of been off the grid since really mid-season. He took over the number one golfer in the world, and then Jordan Spieth shot onto the radar. And I mean, obviously, he had won a few tournaments at that point, but he just continued to win and continued to show up and play phenomenal golf. And at one point he took over Rory McIlroy for one in the world, and then Jason Day took over Jordan Spieth a couple weeks ago when he won his first major. I believe that's how it worked out. So I'm not sure if Spieth is back up to one. I'll have to look that up in just a second. But guys like Jason Day, guys like Jordan Spieth, guys like Rory McIlroy. When people say I've been I'm as guilty as anybody. When I say golf is not fun, golf is not exciting, golf is not interesting without Tiger Woods. I've been guilty of saying it, but it's not the truth because, you watch a kid, not even a guy, a kid like Jordan Spieth, I mean, just dominate courses that, guys have been playing their entire life trying to master, and this kid comes around his first, second, or third time and is just crushing it. So, like I said, golf is certainly in good hands, and I'm just Jordan Spieth right now is back up to number one. It goes Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, Rory McIlroy, Bubba Watson, and Ricky Fowler are the top 5. And with that being said, those are 5 really good names. I mean, the crazy thing about Ricky Fowler is that he's only won, I think, 2 or 3 times in his entire career, but he always lurks. And this year, I know he won this year. Had a big tournament win this year, which brought him up to the forefront a little more in golf fans' minds. But I'm excited for every year I get into golf a little more and a little more and a little more. And I think Jordan Spieth certainly has pushed me over the edge into golf fandom because if there's a tournament on and he's playing, I'm watching.
Right, and when he won the FedEx Cup, he took over the number one spot with that win.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because that was the record 6th consecutive week that the name of the top of the week rankings changed. Which is kind of nuts.
Everything's fluid, man. It's not like the days of Tiger Woods where he would sit out 6 or 7 tournaments, the smaller tournaments, and then go play a major, and still keep number one. Like things are as fluid as ever.
Right, and the previous record for winnings in one year was 20.9 million by Tiger Woods back in 2007. So that just shows you how good of a year Jordan Spieth had by breaking that by $1.1 billion.
I mean, even before winning the FedEx Cup, which it's $10 million, that's a $10 million payday right there. He was already at $12 million for the year. So even before the FedEx Cup, it was still a really good year.
Oh, absolutely. That's not a bad gig if you get it.
That's what I always say, man. I'm glad you listen. That's my line. Looking up now over at the UFC, we reported a few weeks ago it looked like Jon Jones was ready to, accept a plea deal, and he did just that this week. It says here, Jon Jones he reached a plea deal with the district attorney, one that included full restitution to the victim who was hospitalized as a result of the crash. He was also sentenced to supervised probation for up to 18 months, which includes 72 appearances for youth outreach. As long as he abides by the rules, he won't be charged with a felony, which won't affect his career. I watched the proceedings on the internet, and the judge essentially said, you're getting a second chance here. You get a chance not many people get because no one was injured. No one was killed. A lady just broke. Well, no one was seriously injured because a lady broke her arm. She was pregnant. But the thing is that after it happened, Jon Jones didn't do what normal people do and say, I'm not at fault. I didn't do it. He took the blame. I think he had someone mediate a meeting between him and the woman and her family, and he took care of them and made sure everything was okay, and just proved that this is a big learning moment for him in his life, a very big time for him to grow up and mature and become an adult, become a man, because clearly before, he was taking advantage of things. We saw the failed drug test for cocaine recently. It was kind of like looking back on it, it wasn't too long ago, but it kind of like we were seeing the downward spiral of Jon Jones, and luckily it was something. It was still a pretty severe incident, but it was something not as severe as as we've seen out of professional athletes that really kind of woke him up. And hopefully, this is the beginning of a new Jon Jones. But looking obviously now into the future, I don't know how legit the rumors are, but I did see some rumors that he may be back in April-ish to try to take his title back from either Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson, or whoever may hold the title. Obviously, this weekend, UFC event, Cormier and Gustafsson for the light heavyweight title. And I honestly don't think it'll happen that soon. But if names start to get thrown around, I know Cormier wants Jon Jones bad. Like Cormier flat out said, I need Jon Jones back in the UFC because Daniel Cormier won the UFC light heavyweight championship. He was vindicated finally after all those years, everything he's done to get to that spot. But then he goes, but I didn't beat Jon Jones, and he's the guy. He's the best in the UFC, in this division, best champion, all that stuff. I didn't beat him. I only took his title. So I don't know if, and the other thing too is that this week UFC announced that they have scheduled a date at Madison Square Garden for April for a UFC event because they filed an injunction in federal court against the state of New York, essentially saying that their laws against MMA are I don't know if it was unconstitutional or just wrong, but they filed an injunction in court, and if it stands, I mean they'll get to have an event in New York. What better way to headline that event, the first ever event at Madison Square Garden, than to have the long-awaited return of light heavyweight champion, ex-light heavyweight champion John Jones fighting for his title.
That would be nice. And let's be honest, New York State laws against MMA is kind of archaic. Like, it's kind of stupid.
Well, yeah, they don't, if I'm not mistaken, from what I gathered the last time that they were trying to figure out whether they wanted to legalize it or not, it wasn't so much the UFC that they were worried about. It's all the other small, unsanctioned things that are going on, because obviously once you make it legal, right now we get UFC and Indian reservations because obviously it's not American land. They can do whatever they want. So you get a lot of UFC events, or a lot of mixed martial arts events, I should say, on Indian reservations or at like casinos or something like that. So they want to be, they want to be able to control and kind of rule over having a tough commission. Because the other thing too is what's to happen if a fighter suffers brain damage or is severely injured in a fight or something like that. So there's a lot of things. New York State just seems to be like the worried parent that doesn't want to let the kid do something. It continues to be a trend throughout New York State. I get it, but when UFC is promising X amount of events every year for X amount of years, because you got to figure they would do MSG a couple times a year. They would hit Buffalo. You can probably hit a smaller event in Albany. You might be able to hit the Carrier Dome in Syracuse. I mean, there's a whole lot going on there that they're missing out on.
Absolutely. And who doesn't want to go see a UFC fight, especially a big UFC fight at Madison Square Garden?
That would be absolutely ideal. Or even like in Buffalo, because you know how they do the fight nights? They'll do them at smaller arenas, well, quote unquote small arenas. I mean, you could probably host a decent sized UFC event at First Niagara Center in Buffalo. I mean,
right.
It won't be.
Absolutely you could.
It won't be a massive. It probably won't be like a Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, but it might be flyweight championship or something like that. I don't know. Just it's not going to be something they want to stick in because you only get 19,000 people in there, or 18 and change, excuse me. But it just seems like it's time to legalize UFC in New York, for sure.
No, I agree with you.
Moving over to I want to move over to
New
NASCAR.
York. Let's be honest real quick. New York State, they try to ban a lot of stupid stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
And it all stems from New York City. They tried to ban the big golf in New York City. I mean, really?
There's reasons why. I mean, I don't remember why they did it, but there's obviously they have the reasons, and it was voted in, which is or it was passed, which whatever. That's the one thing that cracks me up about like really anything that people get pissed off with like governments and whatnot, is that most of the time we are the reason. Like we voted these people in. Like for instance, wasn't it Bloomberg, Michael Bloomberg?
Hello?
Mayor Bloomberg was the one that instituted the big gulp thing, where you can't have big gulps because people were getting too fat in New York City and they didn't like it. But then people complain about it, but it's like, hey, you guys voted him in. If you don't want him doing stuff like this, don't vote him in office. Or call your local representatives and say, hey, we don't like this. Because it's like not liking a sports team. It's like, oh, hey, I don't like what my favorite sports team is doing, but I'm still going to show up. It's like, well, if you stop showing up to games and stop buying merchandise and they start seeing numbers drop, they'll make a change. So clearly, right. if you make, I know it's apples to oranges, but if you make something, if you can show New York State, I know we're kind of jumping over the map here, but if you can show New York State how important mixed martial arts would be to the state and to the state's budget and the amount of money that they could bring in with it, maybe they'll get it. But until then, I just continue to see the same thing, where they'll just continue to ignore it and push it off and make excuses.
Here's the funny thing about that soda ban, that big gulp ban, is that it doesn't apply to diet soda.
That's hilarious because isn't sometimes, in some cases, diet soda is worse than regular soda, right?
Exactly. Yes, it is. So
yeah, great job. Bang up job on that one. I actually want to move over to NASCAR now. A quick note. Future Hall of Famer, Tony Stewart announced his retirement following the 2016 NASCAR season. Now, it kind of sent shockwaves. Well, it didn't kind of. It absolutely sent shockwaves through NASCAR because in 2 years, they're going to lose Jeff Gordon. They're going to lose Tony Stewart, two of the biggest names in history of the sport, two of the biggest characters in the history of the sport, in different ways because obviously Gordon's very stoic, nice guy. Tony Stewart, very, very opinionated. He's very outgoing. Yeah, he's very outgoing, but he has a personality, and obviously he has the cloud following him right now because of the accident he was involved in last year, where he ran over a fellow driver at a dirt track race. But he has decided that his first race being the Daytona 500 in 1999, he'll wrap his career up. Now he didn't win last year, which was the first time ever in his career he hadn't won a race in NASCAR, at least one race in a season. This year, he still has yet to win a race, so he's been kind of in a bad slump between obviously the off the track stuff with the investigation that obviously he was cleared of any wrongdoing, but there's currently a civil case pending. But also, he broke his leg in a dirt track crash. So he's had some. I mean, the accident. You know, the breaking the leg. That you can say that's a trial. You know, that's something that really tested his mettle. You know, the accident where he ran the fellow driver over. I mean, you can't really. I get really weird about that when people say, you know, he's been through a lot, and they're like, oh well, you know, no matter what, you killed somebody. You know, whether it was your fault or not, you killed somebody. So you can't really say he's been through a ton because that was kind of a self-inflicted thing. But anyways.
That's a lot to go through, period.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, and the thing is that like he took time off, came back, was not the same. Still this year doesn't really. He's getting back to his normal self, but it almost seems like, you know, he's done everything he wants to do. He's won 3 championships, 48 wins as of this point on the podcast, as of recording time. He's won 48 races. I just can't imagine
the type of. I mean, that's got to weigh on you so bad, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Like mentally, like getting back in. I can't imagine that happening and then climbing back into a race car a couple months later.
I think people who say he hasn't been through a lot. I mean, that's a lot right there.
Well, he's been through a lot, but the thing I don't like when like an athlete will get arrested and you know, have to go to jail or something, or you know, like with Michael Vick, for instance. That's the first thing that pops into my mind when someone says, well, he's been through a lot. I understand he's been through a lot, but a lot of it was self-inflicted. So it's like when stuff is self-inflicted, I'm kind of weird about, like, yeah, if like you break your leg or you blow your knee out or you break your arm or whatever, and you come back from that, I get it, where you're like, okay, you've been through a ton, like trial, tribulations, all that stuff. You had everyone against you, the world was against you, but where that I'm kind of just like, you know, I'm just very weird about it, I guess. But
well, yeah, I can't call that self-inflicted though. I mean, the guy ran out in front of his car.
I understand that, and I mean, we've seen the video a bunch of times. We've you know, like I said, they cleared him. I'm just kind of weird about it. You know, it's just better off if I don't talk about it. You know, because I'm just like, it just is bad news written all over it. But Tony Stewart, a surefire Hall of Famer. The interesting thing about Tony Stewart, my dad's a big Tony Stewart fan, so he always likes to point out to me. Tony Stewart has, the interesting thing about him, he's won 3 titles as mentioned, but he's won them when NASCAR's had 3 different championship styles. Back in 2002, he won the Winston Cup, which was just a point system where, they made up an amount, like if you won a race, you got like 182 points, and like second place got like 150, stuff like that. And then they moved to a better format. I can't remember how the second one worked, because they changed it all up. Okay, yeah, I remember now. I'm looking on Wikipedia as we talk. The second one, where he won 5 out of the 10 playoff races, and he absolutely dominated that one. And then the last championship he won in 2011, which was the new format of, if you win, you get 43 points, 42, 40, and as you go down, like second gets 42, third gets 41, and so on and so forth, which is what NASCAR has now. But he's been through it all in the sport. The only thing he hasn't done is won the Daytona 500, which I wouldn't count him out for next year. But,
right.
NASCAR's kind of seen a changing of the guard, because you don't really know, with Jeff Gordon gone, with Tony Stewart gone, Jimmy Johnson's the only driver. I mean, because they were talking about it on TV a couple of days ago. You have Dale Earnhardt, Richard Petty, Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, and I believe someone else before Tony Stewart, as the only people that have won more than 2 titles in the entire history of NASCAR. I mean, obviously, some people are biased and say, you're driving cars in a circle, but it's still a sport. They're still athletes. He's one of the best that the sport will see. I'm not sure if we'll ever see another driver like him again, but the cool thing about it is he's obviously still sticking around. He's still going to be the co-owner of Stewart-Haas Racing. We'll still see him around the track, all that stuff. But with a new crop of drivers rolling in, it'll be very interesting to see how NASCAR adjusts to the youth movement. But also, one quick side note, Clint Boyer will be replacing Tony Stewart in the 14 car in 2017. So it's going to be weird. I know, because next year, Chase Elliott, the son of Bill Elliott, replaces Jeff Gordon in the 24. That'll be interesting to get used to. And then obviously after Tony Stewart leaves, there'll be a replacement there. But, I mean, you think of who's a superstar in NASCAR, you've got Jimmy Johnson, and Kevin Harvick maybe. I mean, Kevin Harvick is just because he's so popular, and his career has really had a resurgence ever since he moved to Stewart-Haas Racing. But besides that, there's not many people in the sport where you're like, oh yeah, when you say, do you know Greg Biffle? You're like, who's that guy? But if you're like, hey, who's Jimmy Johnson? Who's Kevin Harvick? Who's Tony Stewart? Who's Jeff Gordon? Even the casual fan or someone who doesn't care knows who those people are.
Right. I don't. I know who a lot of the people are just because I watch SportsCenter a lot. But other than that, I don't really follow NASCAR. I know enough about it to keep a conversation, thanks to SportsCenter. And I'll read an article every once in a while on it just to keep up on it for a segment like this.
I'm glad you do.
I'm one of those people where I'm just like, yeah, they drive in circles. What do you do? Now, I will say this. Are they athletes? It's debatable to me, but with that being said, I know that I couldn't get strapped into a car in some very restrictive suit and neck gear and a big helmet and drive around the track for 500 laps. That would be awfully difficult, especially at the speeds that those guys attain. So, yeah, you know what? I'll give them the credit, the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, they're athletes, but that's got to be extremely difficult.
I think it is as physically exhausting as NASCAR is. It's mentally exhausting, and I think that's what. I mean, that adds it all just adds up. I mean, it like someone who tells me golf isn't a sport because they're playing golf, or something like bowling isn't a sport because they're bowling. They have a league. They're going towards an ultimate goal, towards a championship, to be the best out there. I mean, if you can find me a competitive chess league, as long as it's competitive and they have a championship or a goal, I mean, you could really argue that if you want to try to tell me that NASCAR racers aren't athletes, or like some people, like I said, say golfers aren't athletes. The word athlete is kind of subjective. It can change with every sport. Like baseball, athlete means, an athlete is a guy who plays the field, hits, runs, throws, catches, whatever. But in NASCAR, it's mental. Like it's more mental than anything because, yeah, a baseball player may have to think about, is this a slider coming? Is a fastball coming? Is a breaking ball? Whatever. But NASCAR drivers are always thinking strategy because you've got fuel mileage, you've got you're going 200 miles an hour. You're trying to figure out, okay, how can I get past this guy? Braking, accelerating, all that stuff. They're very mentally athletic. They have to be, I think, because if you're just some schmuck driving a car, it's going to show up real quick.
Yeah, you have to be mentally sound also because, like I said, you're strapped into that car for hours at a time.
Going 200, 150, 200 miles an hour.
Right. So that's got to be tough.
I want to move over real quick. Sorry to cut you off. I lost you there.
It's all good. I was going to say, I drive to Binghamton sometimes for work, and that's only 3 hours, and I'm like, come on.
I drive to work some days, and I'm like, yo, dude, I don't even want to do that.
Right.
Moving over to the NBA now, a quick update from episode 61. Anthony Bennett, I guess not surprisingly, ends up in Toronto, signs with the Raptors. He's hometown kid now, going back home to play with a hometown team. Also, recently retired player Steve Nash signs a deal and becomes an assistant in Golden State, which another interesting thing about Golden State we found out on Thursday, the date of recording, October 1st. Now it's October 2nd, Friday, because it's 12:26 in the morning. But Steve Kerr had back surgery in the offseason, not recovering as fast as he thought. Will take some time off, undisclosed, undetermined, all that stuff. No one knows how long he's going to be gone. But ex-Laker and son of famous basketball player Luke Walton, will be the interim head coach until Steve Kerr can return. Like I said, no one knows how long he's going to be out, but basketball season's right around the corner. We may see some Luke Walton head coaching here, which is crazy to think, but he's really worked his way up throughout the league and with that franchise. I mean, last year he was a very integral part into that coaching staff. So he was the guy. I don't know if you remember, but in the finals when one of the assistants or one of the video guys realized we need to be starting Andre Iguodala in the finals, and that was the move that made the finals, that guy texted Luke Walton, who then said to Steve Kerr, hey, maybe we should be starting Andre Iguodala, and obviously now the rest is history.
Right.
So he's got his place in history.
Good for Luke Walton.
Absolutely. His opportunity to shine for sure. Moving over to Major League Baseball now really quick. Kansas City Royal pitcher Greg Holland has a significant UCL tear. Now, he's been pitching for a while with it. Apparently, he had some elbow soreness. His stats have not been good, and they've been getting worse. So he's likely to miss. He's going to miss all of next season. Won't be back till sometime in 2017. Now, Wade Davis is the new closer who's had some terrific numbers. So I guess it's almost an addition by subtraction. It's never good when you lose a very good bullpen arm like Greg Holland, but obviously, like I said, he's not been good, not been healthy for a little while now. Pete Rose met with Rob Manfred last Wednesday, and they say a decision will be handed down by the end of the calendar year as to whether or not Pete Rose will be reinstated for potential election into the Hall of Fame. But from what sources have said, they said don't get your hopes up. It doesn't look good, which is understandable. Pete Rose likely will be the greatest player to never be in the Hall of Fame. It's unfortunate, but we've been through it a million times. He did the game wrong. He made the game look bad. And if you make the game look bad, they're going to return the favor tenfold, and they have so far. I mean, they'll drag him around in the mud and for the dog and pony show, and like they had him at the All-Star game. Like you may see Pete Rose more in a baseball fashion. Like again, I know with the All-Star game he was allowed there; they had no problem with that. But I still don't think you'll ever see him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't think you will either. That is too bad. But, you
did, as they say, you do the crime, you do the time. As childish as that sounds like. Hey, did you catch the melee in the Nationals dugout a couple days ago?
Oh, I did. I thought that dude was. What's his name was about to get choked out.
Jonathan Papelbon and Bryce Harper had a little bit of a scrum in the dugout. Apparently, John Papelbon was not very happy that Bryce Harper did not run out a fly ball, and he had some words to say to Papelbon, and Bryce Harper flat out said, if you want to go, let's go. And Papelbon lunged for his throat and choked him. The fight was quickly broken up. And the worst part about it was that manager Matt Williams sent John Papelbon out the next half inning to pitch, and Papelbon blew the game. The next day, Major League Baseball handed down they confirmed a 3-game suspension for Papelbon, which was handed down a little earlier in the season for throwing at a guy, and then the Nationals suspended him an extra 4 games, conduct detrimental, if I'm not mistaken, which takes him out to the end of the year. Now, the thing about this is that the Nationals are likely going to get rid of John Papelbon, because usually in this situation, you have to cut somebody. And they're not getting rid of Bryce Harper, so Papelbon's...
No, Bryce Harper's a superstar.
Well, yeah, and Papelbon should go because he's the one who started all the crap. But
I kind of feel like they might need a new manager, too.
Well, I was just about to get there. But Papelbon, when he was traded to Washington, there was a part of the deal where if the Nationals acquired him, or when the Nationals acquired him, they would pick up his option for next year, which is well over $10 million. So they'll have to eat a lot of cash to get rid of him, but it may be worth it in the long run. And as you mentioned, Lewis, it may be time for Matt Williams to go, because there was a damning article that came out from the Washington Post this week that pointed out that Matt Williams does not have control of that locker room. He appears like he's in over his head, doesn't really know too well what he's doing. While in his first year he did win Coach of the Year, he did do a phenomenal job with that team. As time has gone on, it is shown that his managerial decisions are not great. He's not been treating the veterans very well, which is not a good idea when you have a team full of veterans. So it may be couple years in Washington and done for Matt Williams, and he'll probably learn his lesson and be fine somewhere else. But at this point in time, and I really hope Washington has a ton of talent. I hope they don't do what the Red Sox did, where the Red Sox had Terry Francona, a very loose manager who let the players kind of do what they wanted as long as they did their job, and then bring in an anti-player manager when they brought in Bobby Valentine. I hope the Nationals don't do that. Bring a guy in who is, a player's coach, but also a guy who has a stern set of rules. And you might have to bring a veteran guy in, but, don't make that mistake and set yourself back 4 or 5 years because you shot yourself in the foot just because your players are undisciplined.
Right. And, and the crazy part about that is, he sent Papelbon out to pitch, and then he said he didn't even know there was a fight. Like, how
Absolutely,
do you not know that there's a fight in your dugout? That's ridiculous.
That's just bad PR for that team.
For real.
Moving over now to the playoff picture. I'm currently in the process of writing an article for Better Live Than Dead Sports, BLTDsports.com. It's a little slow because apparently, I don't know if I have writer's block again or I'm just... It'd be a mixture of both. But either way, let's look at this. Let me get my phone unplugged so I can put it up to my face. Excuse me. I don't know if the air just caught that, but I just burped really loud.
I heard it.
In the American League East, the Toronto Blue Jays clinched the East. The Yankees clinched a playoff berth this evening as well on Thursday night. Also, their 10,000th win. It looks like they will be hosting the one-game wild card play-in. In the Central, the Royals have obviously already clinched the Central Division. And then this evening, the upstart Texas Rangers clinched the AL West. It's right now a race between Houston and Los Angeles for the final wild card spot, while Minnesota and Los Angeles are tied. Texas plays Los Angeles. I don't know if Minnesota has what it takes to get back in the race and overtake Los Angeles and Houston so late, but Houston currently is in the final wild card spot, a fall from grace from where they were many weeks ago. Los Angeles and Minnesota have the same record, 83 and 76. So the next couple of days we'll figure that one out. Moving over to the National League now, the Mets obviously won the East. The Cardinals clinched the Central Division this week. The Pirates and the Cubs clinched wild card play-in game berths. It looks as if Pittsburgh will host that game against the Cubs, as mentioned, and the Dodgers clinched the NL West. So we have a pretty good idea of who's going to play where. The Dodgers and Mets right now are trying to are playing the rest of the season out, obviously, to figure out who will get the home field advantage in that playoff series. And then St. Louis will host the winner of Pittsburgh and Chicago. And right now in the American League, Kansas City and Toronto have the same record. I believe the team with the better record will play Texas, and the team with the second best record will play the winner of the Yankees and the other wild card team. So, keep an eye out for that article on BLTDsports.com. It should be up Monday morning because the regular season ends on Sunday, and it's really hard to write an article about playoff teams when the season's not over yet. So I'm working on that. It's the thing is I'm more surprised. I'm not sure what surprises me more, whether the Twins kind of outkicking their coverage this year and really showing a strong bounce back season after struggling for so long, or the fact that the Astros have completely fallen from grace. I mean, they're a young team. Usually young teams struggle their first go-around or first couple go-arounds towards the playoffs or in the playoffs, but they might not even make the playoffs, and that would be, I don't know if devastating is the proper word to use, but it would be pretty damn bad for them.
Yeah, especially how well they were playing during the regular season. I mean, it is still the regular season, but yeah, I mean, they looked like a lot for a while, and they just fell completely apart.
They fell back to earth, reclaimed mediocrity, if you will. But right. They have a very talented team. And the thing about it, too, is that, like on Thursday night, Dallas Keuchel pitched, and the problem with that is they won't be able to line him up for the play-in game unless he pitches on 3 days rest, which he hasn't done. So you're kind of setting yourself up you're kind of setting yourself up to fail in that situation. So we'll see how that one plays out. But I'm excited for that wild card game in the National League because you're probably going to get Garrett Cole and Jake Arrieta. Because, with the season Arrieta's had, you have to pick him over Lester, and then if you do that and you win the game, you have John Lester starting game one of the NLDS against the St. Louis Cardinals, which that might be enough right there to put you over the edge.
And let's be honest, I mean, that is surprising, but is it more surprising than the Yankees clinching a wild card spot?
Well, they didn't even clinch the wild card spot yet. They're only the wild card play-in game. Now,
the play-in game.
I mean, at the start of the year, a lot of us expected the Yankees to win the division. I don't remember. I do remember saying that the East would be incredibly weak this season, which it has been. I know, and Lewis, and a lot of people out there know listening, that at the trade deadline, when the Blue Jays went all in, they were 8 games back. But obviously they knew what we knew, that the East is weak, and it can be had if you make the right moves. And obviously the Blue Jays have made the right moves. I mean, David Price, for instance, is 9-1 since being traded to Toronto. Not only did he help get Toronto in the playoffs, but he may help them go very deep in the playoffs. He's also going to get a very, 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 very big payday, a lot bigger than he was expecting at the start of the season because of how well he's performed the second half of this year with the Toronto Blue Jays. But, I'm very surprised to see that the New York Yankees were able to hang on because they've had some unfortunate injuries. They've had some ineffectiveness, and
Ball tech has been horrible.
Yeah, they lost Mark Teixeira, so we'll see how they fare in the playoffs, or if they make the playoffs, or the 1-game playoff at least. But we'll see how they fare. If they make it in, I'm not sure they go very far, but that's for a different podcast at a different time. Maybe next week we might get our playoff predictions. What I'll do is I'll get our playoff predictions before the playoffs start, but we can talk about it next week when we get on the air, because I think the playoffs will have started by then, but we can talk about it then.
Sounds good to me, man.
Now moving over to the National Football League, the last topic of the week. First off, the National Football League filed for an expedited Tom Brady appeal hearing. This likely ensures we'll have a solution before next week. Now, the arguments can start on February 1st. They may not, especially with the Super Bowl being around that time. I mean, could you imagine, a week before the Super Bowl having Tom Brady in federal court, and then the week after Brady being handed the trophy by the man who's currently taking him to court? I mean, I think that they're smarter than that. They'll be smart to keep it out of the news until necessary. But, I mean, at this point, Deflategate's dead in the water. It has been for a long time. I think the NFL is just trying to essentially beat a dead horse here. And, I don't know. I'm just over it. Like, just get it over with. Just, put the fork in it, admit you screwed up, and move on. Because at this point, no one cares. Like, the season started.
Right.
Nobody cares.
Exactly. I agree. I completely agree. Just let it go.
Yeah, moving on to another big topic of another big source of news: the Pittsburgh Steelers last week lost Ben Roethlisberger. It looked at the time like a season-ending injury. His knee folded the wrong way. Come to find out, it's only an MCL sprain and a bone bruise, so he'll be out 4 to 6 weeks. A lot of doctors have said because of the bone bruise, more likely 6 than 4. But you get guys on the air like Bill Cowher, his old coach, on CBS today saying, well, Ben's a tough guy. He'll be back more like 3 weeks. But you have to remember, one of the doctors that I was reading on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, but he said, I'm not so worried about the MCL sprain as the bone bruise, because, tendons and cartilage, all that stuff heals, but bone bruises are very, very, very difficult and very weird. So you have to, right. Every bone bruise is different. So you have to take it kind of cautiously. But, if I'm the Pittsburgh Steelers, after watching how that game ended on Thursday Night Football, not only do I want a new kicker, but I really want Ben Roethlisberger to find some magic jumping beans or something and get back as soon as possible, because Michael Vick may be a good Band-Aid, but there's no possible way that Michael Vick is going to be able to carry that team to even mediocrity, so Big Ben can come back and take them to the playoffs.
Yeah, well, I mean, Josh Scobie, he missed those 2 big field goal tries, that could have put him ahead. But at the same token, the Ravens, they had 2 busted plays that didn't work out for them on 4th down. That field goal fake was horrible. That was busted right from the start.
Yeah, and we didn't catch the post-game press conferences from either coach, because obviously we jumped right on the air following the game. But I'm assuming that Mike Tomlin would probably admit that going forward twice in a row on 4th down was not a good idea. First off, they tried to run what looked to be a 2-point conversion-esque play where Vic just bootlegs out to the left and tries to run through a hole. And then the second time, Vic ran to the left and then tried to throw back to the right where Antonio Brown. But unfortunately, the defender for the Ravens was there and smacked the ball out at the precise time. But, that game was not entertaining. It was not very good football. I'm not sure if the Ravens are struggling because Mark Trestman is the offensive coordinator now, not Gary Kubiak, or if they're just not a good football team, because they started off winless, and now they're 1-3. They were 0-3 before the game started. That's how you do math, my friends. But I'm not sure if they're a legit contender. I mean, at this point, like I said on Twitter before I got on the air, at Wolf BLTD, if you're not following me, a cheap plug right there. I said on Twitter, if Pittsburgh, because I think Pittsburgh's the only potential threat to Cincinnati winning that division. If Pittsburgh continues to play like this with Vic at quarterback, you might as well just hand the division to Cincinnati, because Cleveland's probably at best going to be 6 to 8 wins because they can't seem to get over the Josh McCown infatuation that they have. And
yeah, really, that's a true story.
I mean, Baltimore's going to have to put together a handful of good football, like a couple weeks of strong football, beat some teams you're not supposed to beat, because you start 0-3, the playoffs, they aren't kicking down the door for the playoffs. They've got a long way to go.
Well, what I saw today was the Pittsburgh Steelers secondary is pretty weak. They're a bunch of young guys. They're not that good.
They're very strong. They're very strong up front and at the linebacker position, but the problem is because the secondary is so weak, you can pick on it.
Right, but even that being said, with the exception of Steve Smith, Sr., who went out with a lower back contusion, the wide receivers could not get open. So if they couldn't get open against a weak secondary, it's not going to look good for when they play real good teams.
I mean, well, we saw they played against the Patriots. I mean, when the Steelers played against the Patriots, it was not good. And then the Ravens, as I said, they went 0-3. So, it wasn't really impressive either way. Excuse me. I like to say, unfortunately, somebody had to win, and the Ravens were the lucky winners there. Last thing before we move over to the Pick 'em, the Carolina Panthers acquired defensive end Jared Allen, who still has some gas left in the tank, may be able to make a nice impact there. At this point, I mean, Carolina looks like the team to beat in that division. So they lost Charles Johnson. He was put on the IR, designated to return, I believe with a hamstring injury. So Jared Allen will be able to fit right in. It's a defense that best fits his playing style. I know the defense in Chicago didn't fit well with how successful. Let me try to rephrase that. He's not successful in Chicago's defensive scheme. He goes to Carolina where that type of scheme they're running he's successful with. So we'll get to see hopefully Jared Allen sacking a quarterback sometime soon. But I would say it's a bold move for the Panthers. I mean, they want to win now. They have the opportunity to make playoffs by just having, I would say, 9 or 10 wins. They could make the playoffs easily, maybe even 8 wins, because that division is not strong at all. With Tampa struggling with the Saints not having Drew Brees. And I can't even remember, for some reason, I just went blank and can't remember the other team in that division, the Falcons. I mean, the Falcons right now have proven to be a good threat, but like baseball, like I said with the Yankees, I think it was the Yankees a couple months ago, They may be on a stretch right now, but I want to see what happens the first time they face adversity and see how they respond. Because sometimes, a team can get on a hot stretch, you win 3 or 4 games, you look great, you look unbeatable. Then you lose a game you're supposed to win, and you just fall apart. Or do you just fall apart, or do you come back and hit 10 times harder the next game? That's what I want to see from the Falcons. I mean, I'm not discrediting the fact that they're 3-0 and they started off undefeated. I'm just saying I want to see what they do when their backs are up against losing when they're not supposed to be, and when lose a couple games that you're not supposed to lose, and then show me what kind of football team you actually are.
I don't know. I feel like they kind of showed it a little bit against the Cowboys. They were down by 14 points. They came back to win by 18.
Yeah, they did. They definitely did show a lot that game. But like I said, I want to see,
which was surprising to me.
I want to see a week where they play Tampa Bay and you're supposed to beat Tampa Bay and they lose. How do they respond? Do they blame themselves? Do they just say, we had a bad week, let's go out next week and show them that was a fluke? I mean, obviously, like I said, you passed the first test with the Cowboys game. That was impressive. Very impressive against a very good defense in Dallas. But it's early. I want to see what they can do. And I'm interested.
I kind of feel like Dallas gave that game away. Like they just became they started out real hot, and then they just I don't know what they did. It was ridiculous. It was horrible.
Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys game, I guess I'll let us transition to last week's Pick 'em, sponsored by FanDuel. Lewis, you did not have a very good week. You took some swings. Well, it's okay. You took some swings the fence, and you're not far back, but you went 9-7 last week. I went 13-3. John went 14-2. John and I are at 29-19. Lewis, you are at 26-22. And then Thursday night football, we all selected the Baltimore Ravens. And as for the rest of the week, I'm not sure if it was because of the matchups, but straight through, we all selected the same teams. So I'm just going to run down really quick and let everybody know who we pick so they know for listening purposes as they listen to our podcast during the weekend or maybe even on football Sunday or just Sunday during football, I should say. Baltimore over Pittsburgh, the Bills over the Giants, which will be tough because the Bills are without LeSean McCoy, Sammy Watkins, and most likely John Miller. Atlanta over Houston, Oakland over Chicago, Cincinnati over Kansas City, Indianapolis over Jacksonville, which may be interesting because Andrew Luck may not play. He has a shoulder injury. He's taking a lot of time off this week, and the Colts, I believe, have a short turnaround next week, so they play Sunday, then Thursday. So you may see Luck sit out today, or not today. They may sit out this week, sit out Sunday, so he can play Thursday, rest up his shoulder. As they say, the season is a jog, not a sprint. I guess or the saying, I don't know. Carolina over Tampa Bay. Philadelphia over Washington, San Diego over Cleveland, Arizona over St. Louis, Denver over Minnesota, which I was kind of on the fence for, but I still think Denver can pull that one out. Although if Minnesota beats Denver, that'll validate a lot of preseason thoughts about that team. It'll continue to go in the right direction. Green Bay over San Francisco because until proven otherwise, Aaron Rodgers, death taxes and Aaron Rodgers, he's damn good at football. We have Dallas over New Orleans, who are expected to have Drew Brees back this week, but we don't know. And then Seattle over Detroit on Monday Night Football with New England and Tennessee having the bye. So
we don't differ on anything?
Nothing. We're all the same this whole week.
I don't think that's ever happened.
I was very shocked to see it happen, but as I looked through the games, double-checking, I was like, I'm not confident enough to pick an upset just because I don't think it's possible with how football's played out so far this season. So
I was on the fence. I was on the fence with Vikings at Denver also. I just think Denver's defense is going to carry that game.
I mean, Adrian Peterson can come out and run for 130, and Teddy Bridgewater can be good enough, and Minnesota's defense can be okay, and they can probably win. But I'm one of those, I'd rather take a loss and be wrong than pick Minnesota and be wrong because, I don't know. I'm just weird about that. Like, if Minnesota wins, I won't be surprised. But if they lose, I also won't be surprised. It's one of those games.
I'm kind of the same way. But like I said, I think Denver's defense is going to win that game for them.
That's what they've done so far this season. So, why change now?
Right.
But like I said, we'll keep you all posted on those, obviously, as things go on. For the first time, long time, if ever, we all selected the same team, so that'll be fun. Besides that, I mean, I think we've really hit everything we can hit in terms of sports this week.
Well, one thing we need to talk about in the NBA is Derrick Rose's new injury.
Yeah, well, Derrick Rose's laundry list of injuries. He got elbowed in the face, has a fractured orbital socket, I believe it was.
That required surgery.
He's going to wear a mask. He'll be back in a couple weeks. Also, I saw something about Flip Saunders, Minnesota Timberwolves head coach, who is currently undergoing chemotherapy. Apparently, things have taken a turn for the worse, and he's not in great shape. So hopefully he gets well soon. One of the most notable coaches out there for sure. Very sad news. Cancer sucks. That's just the long and the short of it.
I have an uncle right now who unfortunately has cancer, and he just had his leg amputated 2 days ago, which sucks really bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not. Cancer's not fun.
Not at all.
And I lost a cousin this summer to cancer, so that really sucks.
I've lost a few family members to cancer. It's not good. It's garbage.
No.
Not the real. It's a jabroni. One thing I do want to point out, I'm very, very, very excited. Now that it is October 2nd, as of recording time, I'm going to go out and buy Avengers: Age of Ultron, and my wonderful girlfriend and I are going to watch Avengers: Age of Ultron. And when that is done, I will be all caught up in the Marvel Universe.
It is a good movie.
The Avengers movies never disappoint.
No, this one is
awesome. I also caught up. I'm also done with season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which started off a little slow, struggled to get me involved in the storyline because I just couldn't really get interested. And then around episode 8 or 9 of a 22-episode season, the top blew off, and I dove headfirst in and was just completely hooked. Season 3 just started, so I've got some watching to get going on. But between that,
it's real interesting.
But yeah, between watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and reading books, I've been pretty busy lately. I think I've read like 4 books in 2 weeks, so I've certainly kept myself quite busy there. But yeah, I'm just jacked up for that movie. I've been waiting for a while, and instead of going to find a dollar theater, I said, we'll watch everything else. We'll get caught up, and then I'll catch that. And I want to see Ant-Man again, because I've already seen Guardians of the Galaxy out of context, watched it back again with context in the Marvel Universe, and it made a little more sense to me. So I do want to go see.
Guardians of the Galaxy was an awesome movie.
I want to go see Ant-Man again, just to see, because obviously movies like Guardians and Ant-Man are kind of standalone right now in terms of where they fit in the universe. But
well, not really. Guardians.
Let me finish.
All right, my bad.
You watch it now, and you go, okay, this fits there, that fits there, but that doesn't really make sense. But the thing that my girlfriend Tori taught me about the Marvel movies is they don't show you anything unless it means something. So
right.
Where something in Guardians may not make sense, or something in Ant-Man may not make sense, but a movie or 2 or 3 down the road, you'll look back and go, holy crap, that's awesome. Like, that makes so much sense now. That's the cool thing about Marvel, is that there's so much continuity in the universe, in the movies, in the TV shows, that it all comes together and makes sense. And they even said recently, there's an article that came out today, or Wednesday, that said the TV shows are actually going to start intertwining themselves more into the universe than just kind of being a timepiece, where they'll say, like, oh, this thing happened, and you're like, oh, yeah, that happened in this movie, so I know when this is happening, but they actually may start to come together and be one, which would be super cool.
No, yeah, that's going to happen. The only show I don't think that's going to happen with is Daredevil on Netflix.
Well, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Daredevil happens right after the Avengers have the big battle in New York, the Battle of New York. I believe that's when Daredevil takes place.
Yeah, it is. Which
I'm learning. I'm learning. I'm picking up.
Doesn't really jive with the Daredevil story, but that is when it takes place. And actually, Daredevil's awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna catch that. I'm gonna catch that at some point in time. But
I was the same way with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Like, it took me a while to get into it. I was like, hey, this kind of sucks. Then when it picked up, like, it really picked up.
Well, the thing too is the first handful of episodes, they're kind of just laying storylines out. They're kind of just saying, right. This is there's like small things that happen, and you're like, okay, like Again, it's like anything, but especially with Marvel, is that you watch something and you may not really understand what you're watching, but then as the season goes on, it makes more sense. So the first handful of episodes may not have made so much sense, but then as the season goes on, you're like, oh, now, episode 5 makes sense because this happened because of that, or like, for spoiler alert, anything that Agent Ward did that seemed sketchy at the start of the show started to make sense as the show went on when he found out that he was part of Hydra, and you're like, oh, right. Okay. Now that has so much more, that pulls so much more weight, has so much more meaning than when I originally saw it the first time around. You're kind of just like, what is this guy doing? That's weird. But again, as it goes on, it all makes sense. And it validates me because it feels like I paid enough attention to actually understand what was happening.
Right. And in season 3, you'll probably see the return of Hydra.
Well, I know season 2 started, and Hydra's kind of still around. I've only watched one episode, so don't spoil it. But I love how they do things, how they tell stories, how it's so fulfilling when the story's over. Like when they defeated Hydra, when they took down Bill Paxton and Hydra in season 2, or season 1, I'm sorry. It was just so like, you were just so pumped up and just thrilled that it happened.
Yeah, the other movie that may not tie in with the whole Marvel universe will be the next Wolverine. It's titled Old Man Logan, which basically follows the storyline of the end of Wolverine's life. So that will probably not tie in at all.
Well, I don't even think that the X-Men and all that stuff, I don't even think they're involved in the Marvel universe at all in terms of the MCU.
But what I'm hearing, though, is that the next one, Age of Apocalypse, may have some tie-ins. Because Apocalypse and Thanos actually used to be kind of buddy-buddy at one point, but not a lot.
I'm very excited for Captain America: Civil War. Guardians 2.
I'm interested to see how they're going to do Spider-Man in that.
That's one thing I was just about to say, yeah, because I'm very excited for Captain America, for Guardians 2, for the Avengers, because Infinity War, like, I am anything Avengers, I'm there 6 days or 7 days a week, twice on Sunday, or 8 days a week, twice on Sunday. I don't know. I'm getting all my sayings messed up. I'm just shot over here. But I would be there every day of the week watching it over and over again because anything Avengers is awesome. But yeah, I'm very interested to see how they tie in Spider-Man because, again, there's been like 12 Spider-Man movies. I don't necessarily know if they've been great because I've only watched like the first one, and then I got bored of Tobey Maguire because he's just some really small white kid.
Right.
And I just moved on from it, and maybe that's why I wasn't so interested in comic book movies when I was younger, because when they came out, they weren't really good. But as time has gone on, I mean, the first thing that really kind of got me into comic book movies was The Dark Knight. And as time has gone on, obviously, I've grown more infatuated with it. But I don't know if I'll ever read a comic book because I don't know if that's interesting enough to me. But I like the fact that they base these off of a story, and it's just everything. There's the continuity and everything comes together, and there's like I said, there's the timeline, there's the MCU. It's just there's so much awesomeness happening in this group that I just never want it to end.
See, what I'm curious about, and it might happen in the next Guardians of the Galaxy, I don't know. Thanos, the Mad Titan, when I found out that they were doing the whole Infinity War type of storyline, I was excited because Thanos has always been, other than Apocalypse, Thanos has always been one of my favorite criminals in the Marvel Universe. I'm waiting to see when they introduce Adam Warlock. If they don't introduce Adam Warlock, I'll be pissed. Because Adam Warlock was always like, the yin to Thanos' yang. He was always like the light to the dark. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. They're going to have to introduce Adam Warlock at some point.
I'm interested to see where the Infinity Stones all end up showing up.
Well, we've already seen 3 of them.
Yep.
So now there's 2 more that have to show up. And, you know, with the next Avengers and the next Captain America, you know, and a couple more, the next Thor, it might end up in the next Thor. Because I believe the Gauntlet's actually held in Asgard right now.
Yeah. I believe actually, I'm trying to remember, Benicio del Toro's character, I believe, has the Collector. The Collector has Collector. Isn't the Gauntlet the thing with like the can't remember.
The Gauntlet is the glove that will hold the Infinity Stones.
Oh no, he has something. He has something. The Collector has something else. It's the thing that the Collector has. What?
He has the Tesseract.
Yeah, what Loki had. Yeah.
He has the Tesseract.
See, I'm getting there. Give me some time.
So, yeah, it'll be
I'm also very interested to see when and how they kill off Chris Evans' Captain America. Because if I'm not, I'm not mistaken, that's coming soon. Well, yeah, but I'm interested to see how they do it, and because obviously that's the one thing that's always kind of I've struggled to understand is so many people in the comic books play different characters. Like Captain America is so many different people, and you know this guy's so many different people, and it just over time the person changes. So I'll be very interested and intrigued to see how they do the transition and what comes of it because. Obviously, it's going to be for people that don't understand or may not understand well, like you know how I used to be, or I might still be that way. They may go, well, "Why would you do that? I don't understand it." But then, if you dig deeper into the story, you know things start to make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if they actually kill him. That's what I'll be interested in. Because, you know, he dies in Civil War in the actual storyline.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see if they actually do.
But we know how. But we know how Marvel kills people off and doesn't actually kill them.
Well, yeah, but that's a comic book thing.
Well, yeah, but how often? How many times has Nick Fury died?
Well,
countless times.
Has he died? Oh yeah, so it's the Punisher in the comic books. So, and the Punisher is going to be in the next Daredevil series. That'd be awesome. I was actually surprised that they killed Gwen Stacy in the last Amazing Spider-Man movie, which she does die at the hands of the Hobgoblin or the Green Goblin in the comic books. I was just surprised they actually killed her off in the movie.
I'm just very interested. I as you can tell, I've dedicated a lot of time to be interested in this stuff because it's so much. It's just so fascinating, and it's nice to be able to disconnect for 2 hours and kind of dive headfirst.
You know what I've been watching? You know what I've been watching that's pretty good?
What's that?
That I actually really like is Gotham.
I've heard some things about it.
We're going to switch over to DC now, but Gotham's actually really freaking good. And the season premiere was this week or last week? Last week. And it started off with a bang, and then this week it just took it to the next level, and it was really good. I like the direction they're going in with Gotham.
So I'm
go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just reading wrestling things here. I just checked my Twitter really quick. There's a possibility that I don't know if it's going to be in wrestling or if it's just going to be an appearance, but Daniel Bryan could be making his return to the road for an upcoming European tour that does not feature John Cena because they'll be taking some time off. So maybe, just maybe, we finally will get the return of Daniel Bryan to a WWE ring.
That'd be nice.
Well, I know his doctors clear him, but the WWE doctors won't clear him.
Right.
Because
I don't want him to get hurt again. I like Daniel Bryan.
He's had too many concussions, and it's just not in their best interest to let him wrestle.
Right.
Sucks, but, what can you do?
Either taking some time off to shoot another movie?
I don't know. I think Cena might just be taking some time off to take some time off. Although they did say there was a possibility he could be dropping the U.S. title to take some time off to shoot a movie or just to take some time off. But either way, he probably deserves it. But I don't mean to cut this conversation short because we're having a very good talk, but I do have to pee really bad. So we've been here for almost an hour and 20 minutes now on the phone. I know we talked a few minutes before the podcast started, so the podcast may not be that long. But it's been another successful episode, number 62. Straight through, no commercials. As usual, check out Amazon. Check out GERENetwork.com/Amazon. It's getting to be that time of year. I know if you want to buy me a birthday present, my birthday's next week. You can go to GERENetwork.com/Amazon. Click on the Amazon banner. It'll send you over to Amazon.com, our promo link, and you can buy stuff for anybody, for me, for my birthday, or for Christmas, whatever you want to be. Or maybe you want to buy yourself something. Click that link. Buy whatever you want to buy. Spend as much money as you want to, and we get a little bit of a kickback that helps keep this podcast free and all the podcasts on GERE Network free. And it also puts a few extra bucks in our pocket for all the hard work that we do. Right. We do it for the love of the game, but a few extra bucks in the pocket also does help us improve all of our equipment and the recording stuff, software that we use. Also, I'm sure if you've paid attention to any sporting event lately, you've probably had FanDuel shoved down your throat, so I won't say much about it. I'll just say if you want to do it, if you want to participate in some FanDuel stuff, GearNetwork.com, click on the FanDuel banner. Again, we get a little bit of a kickback. Help us help you. You can go gamble. We get some money. We get to improve all of our stuff. Win-win situation.
That's right.
Check out all of our other sponsors on GearNetwork.com as well. Check out as well as check out the other podcasts. Get Ready America, House Party Podcast. I know John's Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm sorry, I don't have the name off the top of my head right now. John and Brandon's Fantasy Football Podcast. Check that out. Follow them on Twitter at GERE Network. You can follow me on Twitter at WolfBLTD. Follow Lewis at MRLG Perez on all platforms. Follow us at BLTD Sports. Check out BLTDsports.com. Like us on Facebook, Facebook.com/BLTD Podcast. Keep an eye out for that Major League Baseball article that I should end up writing. If I don't end up writing, please send hate mail to at DJC Money on Twitter. With that being said, I've got nothing else to say, Lewis. Anything else you'd like to add in this week?
No, man. I'm good.
Thank you for being here.
Hey, man, listen, I got to enjoy a nice cigar. I have I told you I was going to grab a water bottle and head out to my car. Obviously, I do this via Bluetooth, but instead of putting water in my big water bottle, like one of the shaker bottles from GNC, I put in some hard cider from one of my growlers from hard cider. So I sat here and drank a whole bunch of hard cider and smoked a cigar and talked sports. I mean, come on. Doesn't get worse than that.
That's a pretty good combination there.
Absolutely.
Well, that being
I
said,
agree.
With that being said, thank you to every single one of you who has tuned into this podcast each and every single week on Spreaker, GERE Network, wherever you may listen on your phones, cars, Xbox, PS3, whatever it may be. Thank you for tuning in. As we always say, you are the reason we are here, and we do this each and every single week, except for that one time we took a break. Thank you again for tuning in, and we will catch you same time, same place next week, my friends. Thanks again. For the 100th time, thanks again for tuning in.
We're better alive than dead.
Oh, man. I almost forgot. Let's try that again.
Yeah,
Ladies and
man,
gentlemen,
what's up?
I'm tired, man. It's 1:15.
I understand.
Ladies and gentlemen, for Mr. Perez,
And for Ryan Wolf,
we are better live than dead.
you're not.
We will see you same time, same place next week. I felt like we were missing something. Thank you for picking that up before I stopped recording. We will see you.
Problem.
We'll see you next week. Thanks again for tuning in, my friends.
Later.